So, this came out of nowhere. After my Skyrim video a few months back, I got a lot of requests to play and talk about Oblivion. I had every intention to do so. I've even had the game installed since that original video. I just never got around to it. So, sorry about that. But hey, better late than never, and never a better time to do so, since Oblivion has just been remastered in the stunning Unreal Engine 5. So let's talk about my recent experience with Oblivion, since, like many others, this was my first experience with this legendary title. Firstly, we have to talk about the remaster. Thankfully, this has been a pretty rock-solid experience for me. Unreal Engine 5 games have a tendency to just not really work all that well in my experience, but I'm happy to announce that not only does the game look incredible, but it also runs remarkably well. I'm sure this won't be the case for everyone, but playing the game from day one and over the weekend, it's nice to just not have any issues. Only minor stuttering, and only when cruising through the open world. I gotta give it to him, it just works, and I know that's a pretty infamous Todd Howard quote at this point, but it's true. The visuals are absolutely gorgeous, and I found myself just looking at walls, floors, character models, and especially the sky and lighting. This remaster has the best lighting I've seen maybe ever. It's really remarkable, and I particularly like how torches light some of the temples and caves you get to explore. It's safe to say if you're jumping in for the first time, you'll be impressed, and if you're returning to Oblivion after playing the original, it'll probably look how your imagination remembers it, and probably better. I don't want to spend this entire video nerding out about the improvements the remaster makes. It looks amazing, it plays a little better, and I've had no issues. What more could I want? I believe there is a number of stat changes to the game in order to round out some of those rough edges the original version of Oblivion had. Thankfully, from what I'm aware, the actual game underneath that shiny coat of paint is relatively unchanged, which I think is for the best. There's some small stat changes here and there, and some light rebalancing, but all in all, it's the same Oblivion. Alright, so the remaster is good, so let's talk about Oblivion itself. Contrast to Skyrim, Oblivion is much more RPG-y. There's a lot more stats to manage and decisions to make in terms of your character build. This scratches a lot of itches that I have as a player, but there's also some things that I don't think have aged quite as well. Stats. There's a lot of numbers in Oblivion compared to Skyrim, and while I do think it's mostly a good thing, as it gives you ways to customize your character, there's also some things I'm not a huge fan of. For starters, level scaling. I really hate level scaling. Skyrim had this problem to what I would say would be a lesser degree, but it's still there. As you level up, the enemies level up, meaning that instead of becoming stronger each level, you're effectively matched each level. This results in certain levels being a pretty huge pain, and I found that sometimes I would level only to find the next enemies I encounter to far outpace me. To fix this, you gotta find a new set of gear, the next tier of equipment, if you will. The first few times this happened, I was quite frustrated. It didn't feel right to level up and supposedly become stronger, only to find that the enemies became more powerful than I did, and my character no longer stood up to them. It's not something that continued to hinder me as I became more familiar with how to combat this and increase my strength in other ways, but the fact that this exists still does tweak me. I understand it's the most straightforward way to keep foes engaging while allowing you to explore in any direction you want, but it's nonetheless a pain point I found with my time in the game. Now, I don't want to make the game sound grossly unbalanced, because it's not. The original might have been, but the remaster is not. Again, the rough edges have been rounded out. But this is a wall you'll run into, and I found myself using the wiki to find ways around this harsh level scaling. Let's put a pin in that for now though. First, we need to talk about the NPCs. Bethesda is all about the NPCs. If you spend any time online, you'll know that. You're watching this video online right now, so you probably do know that. And this iconicism, iconoclast, good game by the way, iconicism, maybe, comes from Oblivion. It's got some black magic AI that tries to emulate daily routines, interactions, and it'll even interact with itself to emulate, realistic communication?
Greetings. The feed bag isn't fancy, but it fills you up. They sure do sell food. Yup, you can buy food there. I've heard others say the same. Slash and smash. Doesn't the name say it all? It's an apt name. He's got big maces and big axes. Herbal is a big fan of killing things thoroughly. Take care. Hi there. Good morning.
Yeah, okay, it's a little silly at times. It doesn't really fool you into thinking that these are real people, but it does have a certain charm to it. It's like a digital AI terrarium, and while I wouldn't say it's the most immersive experience, it is quite unique and fun to mess with.
They say that when you murder someone, the Dark Brotherhood comes to you in your sleep. It's how they recruit new members.
It can't be.
Without question.
So long.
Good day.
Lord Dagon.
Take care.
Body's still warm. Looks like there's a killer about.
Run when you can!
He waited just to tell you. Is he still going? Like an ant over the hilltop. Watch, like, check this. This is gonna be amazing. Little white trousers into the sky. Guy.
The non-player characters don't act like real people. They don't talk like real people. And frankly, most of the time, they don't even look like real people. But they bring life to the game nonetheless. That life may be a little alien, a little weird, and might sometimes ride the line of the uncanny valley, but there's no denying that they're memorable, they're mostly functional, and without them, Oblivion just wouldn't be the same. It's hard to fully explain why these devious little robot people are so charming. Perhaps it's the interactivity of the world they live in. Maybe it's because they're wildly unpredictable at times. It could be that they're oddly friendly at times. And it might be that they're just plain funny. It's probably a combination of all of it. Because of this, they really are the perfect vessels to throw quests and loot at you. It also helps disconnect you from them, so when they inevitably die, you don't feel too bad. They give a fluidity to everything, not despite their weirdness, but because of it. And they are weird, but I wouldn't have them any other way. Which brings us back to our character build. Remember when I said the game could be tough because of the scaling enemies? Yeah, well, that's definitely the case until you find something to break. As I said, there's a lot of stats and effects in Oblivion, which can be confusing and overwhelming since the game doesn't do the best job at explaining what these do. Take the chameleon stat, for instance. It comes in a percentage, and if you have any, your character becomes a little transparent. It's not explicitly stated anywhere, but based on the name of the stat and the effect on your character, you can probably guess that it makes you harder to spot. And yes it does. But like I said, it comes in a percentage. So what happens when you get 100% chameleon? Well, you become completely invisible, but unlike actual invisibility, you're able to attack and interact with objects without breaking said invisibility. So what does this mean? Well, it effectively means you can do whatever you want and get away with it. No, really. And that was my goal. Get to 100% chameleon. So I started enchanting. I started scavenging. I started finding every instance of chameleon I could get my hands on, until finally I had the coveted 100% chameleon. From then on, no one was safe. The idea of the story is to save the world by closing these rifts to Oblivion, but it wasn't the hell portals these fine folk needed to worry about. It was the sociopath who is now completely invisible.
Fine discount spells seems like a bad idea.
I walked into the market square and just started Oh, dude. Goodbye, Irene. Come back, Irene. You're not getting away from me. Uh-oh. Oh, my goodness, dude. Dude, I love not dealing with the repercussions of my actions. Who knew it would be so fun?
Eleanor the Blamer, champion of...
So the level scaling can be a little harsh at times, but there's also few limitations outside of your imagination. The chameleon trick feels like cheating. It feels like I've opened the command console and made myself invisible to every entity, but the thing is, I didn't. I achieved this through gameplay, through experimentation of the game's systems, and a little ingenuity on my part. This is just one way to break the game, but there's plenty others. You can craft spells in the game, which is an amazing addition that, quite frankly, I can't believe didn't make it into Skyrim, but I digress. My buddy figured out that if you craft a really cheap spell that gives you plus 100 luck for 1 single second, you can cast it, then quickly interact with something to reap all the benefits of having 100 extra luck, since interacting with something or someone pauses time. If you do this while shopping, you can basically rob stores blind, but what I really enjoyed doing with it was crafting more spells, as it slashes the mana cost of any spells you make while you have your extra luck. This right here is why I love RPGs so much. This idea of cheating without actually cheating. It's this experimentation that really hooks you into the game. Finding workarounds to problems you can't quite solve, or unlocking something that maybe you shouldn't have quite that early in the game. Skyrim didn't have this, and Oblivion does, which makes me wonder, why? It's easy to compare Skyrim to Oblivion. It's easy to point the finger at Skyrim and say that it's too simple, that it gutted too many systems from Oblivion. Because at their core, they're the same game. It's a different story with a different map, but you're still joining factions, completing quests, exploring, and leveling up. Me personally, I think I prefer Oblivion, but only slightly, and only because the systems are more in-depth and fun to break. But there's something about Skyrim I couldn't quite shake. I was racking my brain thinking about what Skyrim was doing that made me yearn for it while playing Oblivion. I really loved my playthrough of Oblivion, and I will definitely go back for another, but it didn't hold my attention as long as Skyrim did. And I think it really boils down to two major factors. Firstly, I think Skyrim is just easier to enjoy. Yeah, it's not as in-depth, but it's also more about the gameplay and exploration. I spent far more time in menus while playing Oblivion, whereas in Skyrim, I spent a lot more time actually playing the game. I spent more time in Oblivion trying to get around the level scaling, whereas in Skyrim, I was spending more time enjoying the new loot I was finding while I was exploring. Secondly, I do wholeheartedly believe that Skyrim has the better exploration of the two games. There's still a lot of places to explore and things to find in Oblivion, but a lot of them, especially the Oblivion portals, are copy-pasted. To add on to this, I found many of the locations to be particularly underwhelming. In Skyrim, most locations had something interesting going on. Even the smallest caves had some interesting loot to get, but in Oblivion, I often found that not all points of interest had, well, something of interest. And this is just a reminder that Oblivion Remastered is still just Oblivion. It still has the design of a game made in 2006. You may be wondering why I haven't mentioned the story or the factions, and frankly, it's because there's not a lot to say about them. But I'll try. The story is okay. I don't want to say it's bad, it's certainly more prevalent than in Skyrim, though I still found myself mostly ignoring it to focus on my own adventures. I did do a lot of the story quests, and this time I actually was getting a little interested in some of the Elder Scrolls lore, mostly because of Martin. Martin is this guy you run errands for, and every time you return to him, he throws out a lot of story and lore at you, most of which goes over my head, but every once in a while he'd spew something at me that would stick and pique my interest. That's not to say I'll become a full Elder Scrolls lore channel now, but it does mean that I was a little bit more invested than I was in Skyrim. It makes me want to play Skyrim again with some of the knowledge I've picked up to see if I can catch anything else. Again, the story, not fantastic, but just like in Skyrim, the magic lies with you and your adventure rather than the story of the game, which I really enjoy. Although, Oblivion's magic probably lies with those goofy NPCs, but I once again digress. The factions, on the other hand, do repeat a lot of the notes from Skyrim, though I suppose it's Skyrim repeating from Oblivion, or perhaps it's Oblivion repeating Morrowind. I don't know who started it, but when we get Elder Scrolls 6, we need a shakeup with some of these faction quests. I still enjoyed joining the Dark Brotherhood and the various other guilds, but many of them felt like they did in Skyrim. It didn't bother me too much here, but if I were to play another Elder Scrolls game and repeat these same familiar quests, it will start to bother me. So all in all, if playing Skyrim was dipping my finger into the Elder Scrolls series, Oblivion was a full plunge. While I wouldn't call the Elder Scrolls series my favorite, neither from an RPG side or a fantasy side, I do understand the following behind these titles. While I prefer Oblivion's mechanics and depth, it is missing a lot of the exciting loot and exploration that its younger brother has. One thing I will say though is that the remaster has some seriously satisfying combat. It's the same simplistic smacking we're all familiar with, but this time it has a satisfying crunch to it. It's just fun to hit stuff, which you do a lot in this game. Thumbs up. I'm glad I finally played Oblivion and got to experience the wacky AI that you see online all the time. I'm glad I was able to break the game and become permanently invisible and live out my sociopathic dreams. Which I definitely don't have. It's just a really good game and I had a lot of fun. If it's not fun, why bother? Well, this was a fun game and you should definitely bother. I'm reaching, I know. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get back to playing Clair Obscur because I'm hopelessly addicted. No, seriously, send help.